Imagine a king, powerful, adored, feared, simply vanishing without a trace. No rebellion, no assassin's blade, no body in a tomb of marble and incense. One morning the throne stood empty, the crown cold, and the courtiers whispered only two words: "He's gone." History prefers neat endings. It likes its monarchs embalmed, buried, and catalogued in gold letters. But some names were not erased by failure or scandal. They were swallowed. The annals of empire hide absences that feel deliberate, gaps where the ink itself seems to have hesitated. Kings, queens, emperors, rulers who once commanded continents slipped from record as though the world had blinked. Was it murder, exile, madness, or something stranger? The truth, if it exists, was buried by the same hands that once saluted them. Their faces survive only in fading frescoes, their seals broken, their palaces repurposed. Yet across centuries, rumors have refused to die. In monasteries, archivists whisper of letters sealed in wax and never delivered. In ancient vaults, sarcophagi lie labeled, but empty. The chronicles speak of rulers who went hunting and never returned, of ships found adrift with thrones engraved upon the hull, of coronation rings discovered hundreds of miles from where their owners were last seen. Some called them cursed, others chosen. Power leaves echoes, absence leaves a void that hums. And sometimes that hum grows so loud that history has no choice but to listen. What if the world's greatest thrones are built not only on the bones of the dead, but on the disappearances of those who refused to die as history demanded? In these stories, the boundary between myth and evidence collapses. Monarchs vanish into forests, deserts, oceans, into silence. And the silence itself becomes the record. Tonight, we open the forgotten scrolls. We follow the trails of vanished crowns, of kings who may yet sleep beneath unmarked soil, and of empires that erase their own rulers to survive. Prepare to step into the absence where power once stood, where even memory seems afraid to linger. Because sometimes history does not end. It simply walks away. Across the centuries, the earth itself has conspired to erase its monarchs. Some vanished in deserts that offered no witness, others in oceans that refuse to give back what they take. But the strangest disappearances happened not in wilderness, but in the very heart of power, behind palace walls, where the marble remembers everything except the truth. Chroniclers in gilded courts once wrote their rulers' lives with reverence, every heartbeat documented, every triumph illuminated. And then, abruptly, the quills stopped. The parchment ended mid-sentence. The ink dried. The reason? Official silence. The oldest kind of burial. In the 12th century, a sultan of the Near East rode out to meet a caravan and never returned. His horse was found tethered by the road, the saddle still warm. For years his subjects claimed he lived as a hermit, wandering the wastes in penance. But when archaeologists later uncovered his mausoleum, it was empty, built centuries before, waiting for a body that never came. Far to the north, chronicles of medieval Scandinavia speak of a young queen who disappeared during a blizzard. Soldiers found her crown embedded in ice, her footprints leading toward the sea. The following spring, fishermen netted a single shoe of woven gold. The rest of her kingdom melted into legend. Even mighty China, master of record-keeping, holds ghosts between its dynasties. One emperor's reign ends mid-paragraph. The next begins without explanation. Excavations of his supposed burial mound revealed decoy chambers filled with terracotta guards, yet the coffin itself was missing. The emptiness was intentional, carved into stone like a sentence left unfinished. And then there are the European monarchs whose portraits hang in galleries, painted decades after their supposed deaths. The faces are older, eyes warier, the brushwork hesitant, as if the artist painted from rumor, not presence. One scholar found traces of new pigment atop older canvas, as though history itself had been repainted to disguise an absence. Nations forget because forgetting is convenient. A vanished monarch spares a kingdom from the scandal of assassination or madness. Better a mystery than a confession. Better a legend than a wound. But the earth does not forget. Beneath every palace lies a foundation stone cut for a tomb that was never filled. Beneath every legend, an echo, the soft scrape of footsteps retreating into the dark. Somewhere between loyalty and fear, history closed the door and never reopened it. Every disappearance breeds 100 explanations, each more desperate than the last. When a king vanishes, the world cannot bear the void. It fills it with invention. In the smoke left behind, stories bloom like mold, foul, unstoppable, alive. Some said the vanished were victims of treachery, their bodies hidden beneath monasteries or sealed within the walls of their own castles. Others believed they escaped, tired of crowns too heavy to wear. Chroniclers recorded sightings that multiplied like ghosts, a monarch glimpsed at a distant market, another tending vines in a foreign land. Hope can be a kind of madness. It keeps power breathing long after the pulse is gone. Take King Sebastião of Portugal. In 1578 he rode into Morocco, shining in silver armor, vowing to bring glory to Christendom. The battle ended in slaughter, and no one saw him fall. His men buried bodies by moonlight, none certain which was their sovereign. Yet generations later, fishermen swore he would return on a foggy morning to reclaim his throne. Centuries passed, the fog remained. The legend, called Sebastianism, turned absence into faith, a religion of waiting. In France, whispers clung to the fate of young Louis XVII, the boy imprisoned during the Revolution. Officially, he died of disease in the Temple Tower. But rumors spoke of switched bodies, secret rescues, hidden heirs. Even Napoleon, decades later, admitted he had met a child with the king's eyes. When scientists examined the preserved heart said to be his, its DNA matched the royal line. Yet the grave beneath the tower contained no bones. Two truths, perfectly irreconcilable, still face each other across time. In the East, stories of vanishing emperors carried divine undertones. The Japanese tell of rulers who ascended into mountains to become kami, spirits guarding the land. The chronicles phrase it delicately. He withdrew into the mist. No rebellion, no corpse, no end. Just transformation. But perhaps the most haunting are the ones erased by politics. A ruler inconvenient to his heirs simply ceased to exist. The scribes scratched his name from coins, melted his statues, painted over his image. In ancient Egypt, pharaohs were damned to oblivion by decree, an execution of memory more final than death. Centuries later, archaeologists uncovered these silences, trying to measure what was meant to be forgotten. Empty tombs, false inscriptions, half-written reigns. The pattern is unmistakable. When power fears exposure, it buries its own reflection. So were they murdered, exiled, ascended, or rewritten? The answer changes with every retelling. Yet each legend agrees on one point. The crown itself never disappears. It simply waits, suspended between history and rumor, ready to land upon another head bold enough to believe in its myth. Because in every age, when a ruler vanishes, the absence becomes the throne. There is another kind of disappearance, quieter, more deliberate, when a monarch fades not into exile or legend, but into the folds of their own shadow. No armies, no betrayal, no blood. Just a slow retreat behind closed doors until history forgets to knock. Power, after all, is a performance. It demands applause, and without an audience, it starves. Some kings understood this too late. Surrounded by sycophants, they mistook silence for reverence and isolation for safety. Then one day the court found the throne empty, the ink on decrees drying mid-sentence, the crown resting beside an extinguished candle. Consider Emperor Zhu Qizhen of Ming China, captured by Mongols and presumed dead. When he returned a year later, his ministers hesitated to believe he still lived. To preserve stability, they declared him a living ghost and locked him away. For 7 years, he walked his own palace as a phantom, officially non-existent, while another ruled in his name. When he finally reclaimed the throne, he ruled like a man already buried. Even his portraits darkened. The pigment turned ashen over time, as though paint itself conspired to remember the truth. In medieval Persia, a sultan known for dreams of conquest gradually vanished from his own ceremonies. He sent doubles to appear in parades, emissaries to attend prayers, until one morning his palace gates remained shut. Courtiers insisted he was ill, then meditating, then traveling. Years passed before the public realized no one had seen his face. When rebels broke in, they found only his clothes folded on the bed. Not a stain, not a bone. The room smelled faintly of cedar and nothing else. The pattern repeats across dynasties. Rulers who disappear without leaving, erased not by blades, but by bureaucracy. Ministers redact their names, scribes adjust calendars, and monuments shift dates to align with convenient fictions. The most effective vanishing is administrative, when the state edits reality, until the sovereign becomes a rumor footnoted in his own reign. Historians call it damnatio memoriae, the condemnation of memory. But its cruelty lies not in forgetting, it lies in remembering selectively. To be half remembered is worse than death. A dead king may inspire, a doubtful one destabilizes. And so, history cures itself by cutting out the infected line. Every empire keeps such ghosts, names struck from ledgers, faces chiseled from reliefs, titles replaced with vague phrases, the usurper, the unmentioned one. Yet the absence hums louder than presence. The corridors where they once walked feel colder. Archivists find entire pages missing, as if the parchment itself recoiled. In the end, power erases itself, for the same reason men disappear into legend, to escape judgment. But the silence it leaves behind is its confession. When a monarch disappears, the throne doesn't remain empty, it echoes. Courtiers whisper, priests invent omens, and the people cling to certainty, as if belief itself could rebuild the vanished body. The absence becomes a riddle everyone must solve to stay sane. In every age, power abhors a vacuum. Ministers swear loyalty to shadows, forging decrees in a dead man's name. Rival claimants appear, each insisting the ruler lives in secret exile and has entrusted them with the realm. Coins continue to be minted with the missing monarch's face, even decades after the supposed disappearance. The lie comforts. The lie maintains order. When Edward V of England vanished from the Tower in 1483, Londoners whispered that he had escaped to Flanders. Years later, men claiming to be the lost boy appeared across Europe, each one convincing enough to ignite rebellion, each one swiftly silenced. Centuries later, bones found in the tower were sealed in Westminster Abbey, but even the royal historians admit they might belong to anyone. The crown needs closure more than truth. In Russia, the legend of the false Dmitris multiplied like a fever. The boy prince, supposedly murdered in childhood, kept resurrecting in impostors, who rose, ruled briefly, and fell. Yet the myth refused to die. The people needed their lost ruler to outlive the cruelty of his killers. They needed endurance to be hereditary. Sometimes the echo becomes national identity. Portugal still waits for King Sebastian. France still debates the fate of its child king. Japan still guards the mountain where an emperor dissolved into mist. These stories knit nations together in mourning that never ends. A vanished monarch is a mirror. Each generation looks into it and sees what it fears most. That power is transient and disappearance inevitable. The silences left behind are physical, empty tombs guarded by ceremonial honor, palaces preserved though no one has reigned there for centuries, portraits whose eyes follow you down long corridors as if still asking to be found. Even the air feels denser in such places, saturated with questions. Historians dig for proof, letters, bones, a shred of cloth, and find only patterns. Disappearances repeat like music across empires. the same note struck in different keys. The faithful call them mysteries, the cynical call them cover-ups. But the result is the same. A space where truth should be, echoing endlessly. Because what lingers after a monarch vanishes isn't the man or the myth. It is the structure built around his absence. Governments, religions, even families learn to live beside a ghost. They build ceremonies to contain it, titles to disguise it, and rituals to keep it silent. Yet silence has its own appetite. The longer it lasts, the louder it becomes. Centuries later, the earth began to answer the questions history had silenced. Archaeology, our modern seance, turned its attention to the vanished monarchs, peeling away layers of soil and lies alike. Beneath cathedrals, under palace floors, in forgotten forests, the search for what was lost became a quiet obsession, to prove that absence itself leaves residue. In 2012, construction workers beneath a car park in Leicester struck bone and found a skeleton twisted by scoliosis. The DNA matched Richard III, the king lost in battle and supposedly thrown into a river. His body, they said, had been misplaced. 500 years of rumor ended not with triumph but with bone dust and a parking fee. The discovery rewrote textbooks, but it also reminded the world how thin the line is between legend and landfill. Similar revelations appeared elsewhere. In the sands of the Sinai, fragments of a golden cartouche hinted that one of Egypt's erased pharaohs, long thought mythical, had indeed ruled briefly before being struck from every record. The cartouche was found upside down, a symbol of damnatio memoriae, the deliberate inversion of memory. Even buried, the defiance persisted. Modern science has become the new court historian, yet it too is selective. DNA tests, isotope analyses, and radiocarbon dates now speak where chronicles are mute. They whisper corrections. A missing emperor re-identified among anonymous remains in a crypt. A queen's coffin discovered beneath a chapel mislabeled during restoration. Each revelation feels like an apology from time itself. But the discoveries also expose how willingly we inherit deceit. For every monarch found, 2 remain conveniently lost, erased not by chance, but by politics too fragile to confront its own origin. Some nations prefer their vanished rulers to stay vanished. A mystery, after all, can unite where truth divides. In vaults and laboratories, curators handle relics like sacred relics of belief itself, a crown fragment, a piece of silk, a letter never sent. Each fragment is a confession, proof that even the mightiest tried to control what could not be owned, how they would be remembered. And yet, the archaeology of absence uncovers more than bones. It reveals the shape of fear. Every sealed tomb, every forged record, every missing name exposes a simple truth. Power always fears what comes after it. To vanish is to outwit mortality for a moment, to leave the living chasing shadows. The archaeologists close their notebooks, the lights dim. In the silence, the soil settles back, holding its secrets a little tighter. For now, history has recovered a few names, but the greater part of its royalty remains unaccounted for. Monarchs still hiding in the folds of time, where no spade can yet reach. The longer you study vanished monarchs, the more you realize that disappearance is not an ending. It's a form of survival. The dead can be mourned, catalogued, confined to a date. But the missing remain restless. They drift between rumor and remembrance, shaping the centuries that followed as surely as the living once did. To vanish is to become untouchable. Every king who disappeared without a body gained what no living ruler could keep: eternal speculation. As long as no grave is found, the story never ends. People whisper that the monarch still walks among them, that he will return when the kingdom needs him. Faith replaces fact, and absence becomes divinity. Power, freed from flesh, turns immortal. Look closely, and you will see how much of modern sovereignty still feeds on this ghostly hunger. Royal ceremonies reenact authority that has already vanished. Crowns passed through hands that tremble under the weight of memory. We adore the image of continuity because it conceals how fragile it truly is. The throne, the palace, the anthem, they are all monuments to those who disappeared rather than died. The truth is that every monarch vanishes eventually, some into legend, some into politics, some into the soil. A few are rediscovered centuries later, skeletons polished and displayed as proof that mystery can finally be solved. But solving a mystery doesn't end it. It only shifts its echo. The ghost changes name and moves on. Beneath London, beneath Cairo, beneath Kyoto, the ground hums with unburied sovereignty. You can almost feel it when the wind turns strange, when church bells hesitate before the final note. It is the tremor of power remembering itself, the ache of crowns that never found a head willing to wear them. Perhaps that is why we keep returning to these stories, because we sense our own reflection in them. History loses kings the way memory loses people, gradually, mercifully, and never completely. And in that loss, we recognize the outline of ourselves. Fragile, brief, destined to fade, yet desperate to be remembered. So tonight, as you leave this story behind, imagine the empty throne still waiting in the dark, dust gathering where gold once gleamed. Imagine the echo of footsteps retreating down corridors that no longer exist. Power, like breath, leaves no monument, only a whisper that refuses to die. If this story lingered with you, let it stay. Leave a thought below and step deeper into the labyrinth of forgotten truths. Because some truths deserve to be remembered, no matter how much they hurt.